Hi everybody, it's Barry here again from Turning the Page, and just so good to be with you again. And a few weeks ago, I woke up with some really bad pain in my left shoulder. I was in absolute agony, and my wife was away from home, and I knew that I had to go to an emergency doctor. So this is sort of like 11 o'clock at night, so I dressed. But when I came to put my shoes on, I realised I just wasn't able to tie up my shoelaces. But I didn't care, and I just needed to get help. And so I left home with untied shoelaces, which is not something I generally do. And when I reached the 24/7 emergency care centre, I was greeted by a nurse, and I was asked all these COVID questions, and so, as you do these days. And I asked her if she'd mind actually doing up my shoelaces, and so she kindly reached down and tied them up for me. You know, she did for me what I could not do for myself. Eventually, after some time, I saw a doctor, received some medication, which was great, went home, and what the diagnosis was that I'd actually just been overworking these muscles and had actually damaged them. And but after some rest and physiotherapy and a change in some of the garden machinery that I use, my shoulder's actually starting to feel a bit better now. It has some moments where it gets a bit sore, but it's actually much better. But it was that simple, small act of someone tying up my shoelaces for me that really helped me in my distress. You know, we encourage independence, don't we? You know, having a do-it-yourself attitude. You know, we validate and endorse the self-made man or woman. And with rugged individualism, we pride ourselves on what we can do. But there are some things we just can't do it for ourselves, like when I'm injured, tying up shoelaces. But those shoelaces also represented something about something kind of undone and messy, that I was unkempt and unfinished. I felt like a dishevelled mess, actually. How could I enter a doctor's surgery looking like that? You know, I have certain standards of appearance, yet here I was confessing my weakness and an inability to do such a simple but quite complex task of tying a few pieces of cord together. And I've had the privilege of listening to people share their untied shoelaces, those deepest hurts, disappointments, struggles, unresolved pain where shame and guilt have sort of clotted together. You know, it's a weight on their weary shoulders. It's a burden of regret and loss. It's like they need someone else to be there and to be a witness to their shoelaces. That life isn't great. You know, it isn't neat and tidy, and stuff does happen along the way that can mess us up. And perhaps untied shoelaces have caused them to trip up in life repeatedly. Or maybe they've adjusted their walk to sort of compensate for those untied shoelaces. And I think of a few Bible stories. You know, there's the woman at the well, one of Jesus' stories, where to get her water she had to walk to the well, but she didn't want to meet any of the other women of the village because she was the focus of gossiping and shaming. So she went in the middle of the day when the sun beat down the hottest. You know, wisdom would have said to stay inside and go later in the evening when it was cooler for all the other women, but she got her supplies when no one else was around. But this time it was different. Someone was actually sitting on the edge of the well, a man, a Jew, and he was alone. Someone she, for religious rules, should not associate with him. This was crossing all sorts of societal and cultural rules and boundaries. But here he was, asking for water. And so a conversation commenced where he seemed to know everything about her. All the marriages she had had and her living with a man that wasn't her husband. It was like he could see through everything. Even the subtle little ploys she used to avoid going deep. He seemed to know exactly how to negotiate through them. She was becoming undone, and shoelaces were showing. There was no judgment, shaming, problem solving, rebuke. Instead, it was just Jesus' presence and welcome that tied things together. And then there's the story of Zacchaeus. He was a small man, and everyone in his town despised him. He was the tax collector for the Roman Empire, but I think something was taxing on his soul. There were regrets, pains, abuses in his life, loose shoelaces that he couldn't resolve. And that was what it was like until love came to town. And Jesus walked through the village and looked up and saw Zacchaeus up a tree. There's a good solution for him to get over, big people blocking his view. And then Jesus went to Zacchaeus' home for lunch. Some shoelaces needed attendance. It says that when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter, He has gone to be the guest of a man with untied shoelaces. Well, not quite, but that's my version. And then there's Peter. He was a man wholly undone. Yet around a fire of tasty barbecued fish, Peter's untied shoelaces were shown, and Jesus, all that shame and guilt, Jesus retied them. And Jesus doesn't pick the perfect, okay? Instead, he comes to us knowing our loose and rebellious shoelaces perfectly well. He eats with us, drinks with us, and commissions us, just like Peter, to do the same with others. Embarrassment is always welcome at the feet of Jesus. How do people respond when you start to open up and share the untied shoelaces of your life? Do they avoid you, problem solve, chastise, or do they shut up? I think we need more shutter-uppers. Look, I want people to know they are not alone with their loose, shoelaced embarrassment of not having it all together, and I have not got it all together. They need a confessor, someone who they can spill their guts to, spill the disheveled pain to them, not to be told to quit them whinging, moaning, and complaining. Mental health can't be found in isolation from each other. It's not a DIY project. I seriously think much of what we go for in therapy, like counselling, spiritual direction, psychotherapy and all that, is the need to confess the heart and to have a witness. We go to the professional shoelacer. Perhaps we have delegated human intimacy to a professional grouping because we have not been taught how to relate. I've seen some amazing videos on how to tie shoelaces. So many different ways to perform a simple task. But what a gift it is to listen to the loose ends of someone else's life. They want your focused attention, to be listened to, not to be judged for your dishevelled appearance. They also don't want the conversation of fingers and laces to be told to others. This is an intimate moment of sacrifice and service, and I suppose that's what love is. Here's some quotes to consider. When we honestly ask ourselves which person in our lives mean the most to us, we often find that it is those who, instead of giving advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a warm and tender hand. Henri Nouwen. And it is God's love for us that he not only gives us his word, but also lends us his ear. So it is work that we do for our brother when we listen to him, learn to listen to him. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. In successful psychotherapy, a caring, loving relationship, psychologists C.H. Patterson and Hydor admit that psychotherapy is in chaos. Their solution is worth a second look. Profession helping efforts, they suggest, should abandon identifying specific diagnosable disorders and coming up with a specific treatment plans. They should focus on one simple yet profound idea, that the essence of all successful psychotherapy is love. They go so far as to suggest that their book could well have been titled Psychotherapy, The Purchase of Love. Larry Crabb. Learn to respond to others with honest, open questions instead of counsel or corrections. With such questions, we help each other into deeper speech. Parker Palmer. When you speak to me about your deepest questions, you do not want to be fixed or saved. You want to be seen and heard, to have your truth acknowledged and honoured. Parker Palmer. Good work is relational, and its outcomes depend on what we are able to evoke from each other. Parker Palmer. And the final Parker Palmer is, it is usually most helpful to ask questions that are more about the person than about the problem. Some questions. What's it like to share your dishevelled needs with someone else? That's number one. Number two, what does it take to be a good shutter-upper? Number three, mental health is found in community with at least one other. Who is that for you, and how do they help you? Hey, thank you for watching or listening, and especially big thanks to those who contributed something towards the cost of running Turning the Page. It's really very helpful. And just a bit of a shout out to Niles or Nils. He's one of our podcast listeners, and thank you, Niles, for your wonderful review. Okay, until next time, God be with you. Bye.